The crystal chandeliers of the Grandeur Hotel ballroom scattered light across hundreds of guests dressed in their finest evening wear. The annual charity gala was the social event of the season, where millionaires and billionaires gathered not just to donate, but to display their wealth and influence. Among the glittering crowd, one man stood out, not because of what he wore, but because of the aura of absolute confidence that surrounded him. Nathan Sterling moved through the crowd like a shark through water, smooth and predatory. At 32, he had built an empire that spanned real estate, technology, and luxury brands. His tailored midnight blue suit probably cost more than most people earned in 6 months. Women turned to look at him with barely concealed interest, while men straightened their postures, hoping to catch his attention for a potential business connection. But Nathan barely noticed any of them. He had attended dozens of these events, kissed countless hands, made empty promises to charitable causes, while his accountants found tax loopholes. Tonight felt like just another performance, until his eyes landed on someone who did not belong to this world of excess. The woman who refused to bow. Near the entrance, coordinating the flow of VIP guests with remarkable efficiency, stood Claire Bennett. Her simple black dress was professional rather than provocative, her hair pulled back in a practical twist. While everyone else seemed to be performing for an invisible audience, Claire focused entirely on her job. She directed waiters, solved small crises, and greeted guests with genuine warmth that had nothing to do with their bank accounts. Nathan found himself watching her longer than he intended. There was something magnetic about her complete disinterest in the spectacle around her. She moved with purpose, spoke with clarity, and when she smiled at an elderly couple struggling to find their table, the expression reached her eyes in a way that seemed foreign in this room of calculated charm. He decided to approach her, confident that his usual methods would work. They always did. Money opened every door, and beauty followed money like moths to flame. "You seem far too genuine for a place like this," Nathan said, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. Claire looked up from her tablet, her hazel eyes meeting his with polite professionalism. "I'm simply doing my job, sir. Can I help you find your table?" Nathan smiled, the expression that had melted resistance countless times before. "I'm exactly where I want to be. Nathan Sterling, and you are far too beautiful to be hidden behind a work tablet." "Claire Bennett, and I'm not hiding. I'm working." Her tone remained courteous but firm, a boundary clearly drawn. Most women would have softened at his attention, but Claire simply returned her gaze to the tablet. Nathan felt an unfamiliar sensation, something between irritation and intrigue. He was not accustomed to being dismissed. "I could change your life tonight. One evening with me, and you would never have to work events like this again. Name your price." The tablet in Claire's hands trembled slightly, but when she looked up, her eyes blazed with an emotion that made Nathan take an involuntary step back. It was not fear, or even anger in its simplest form. It was righteous fury mixed with profound disappointment, as if he had revealed himself to be far less than she had hoped humanity could offer. "My price?" Claire's voice was quiet, but cut through the ambient noise like a blade. "You think everything and everyone can be bought? That I'm some commodity you can acquire like one of your companies or cars?" Before Nathan could respond with his usual charm, Claire continued, her words precise and devastating. "I don't know what kind of women you're used to dealing with, Mr. Sterling, but I'm not for sale. My dignity is not for sale. My self-respect is not negotiable. And frankly, your money means nothing to me if this is how you choose to use it." The slap that echoed in silence. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, perhaps to apologize, or perhaps to double down on his offer, but Claire was not finished. The anger in her eyes transformed into something deeper, something that looked almost like pity. "You know what's truly sad. You probably think you just paid me a compliment. You probably believe that throwing money at people is the same as valuing them.
but all you've shown me is how poor you are where it actually matters." The words struck harder than any physical blow could have. Nathan felt something crack inside his carefully constructed armor of confidence. He had been rejected before, though rarely, but never like this. Never with words that seemed to see straight through to the hollow place he pretended did not exist. "I feel sorry for you," Claire said softly, and somehow that was worse than her anger. "Because you have everything except the ability to see people as human beings, and that makes you poorer than anyone in this room." She turned away, her attention shifting to a waiter who needed direction, dismissing Nathan as if he were no more than a brief interruption. He stood frozen, aware that several nearby guests had overheard the exchange, their curious glances burning into his back. The seed of obsession. Nathan left the gala earlier than planned, ignoring the disappointed looks from women who had hoped to catch his attention and the business associates who wanted to network. His driver James noticed the unusual silence as they drove through the city streets, but wisely said nothing. In the back of the luxury vehicle, Nathan replayed the encounter repeatedly. He had expected surrender, perhaps some coy resistance that would make the conquest more interesting. What he received instead was a mirror held up to his soul, and the reflection was not flattering. Most disturbing was the fact that he could not stop thinking about her. Not her appearance, though she was certainly attractive, but her words. They had planted themselves in his mind like seeds in fertile soil, growing into uncomfortable questions. When had he become this person? When had his wealth transformed from a tool into a weapon? When had he stopped seeing people as individuals and started seeing them as acquisitions? The awakening of something new. Back in his penthouse overlooking the glittering city, Nathan poured himself a drink but left it untouched. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected his solitary figure, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alone. He thought about Claire, probably taking a bus home to some modest apartment, tired from a long evening of work. She had rejected him not because she was playing hard to get, but because she genuinely found his offer insulting. There was no strategy behind her words, no manipulation, just honest reaction to what she perceived as degrading behavior. Nathan picked up his phone, intending to have his assistant find out everything about Claire Bennett. His finger hovered over the contact, then slowly lowered. That would be exactly what he accused him of doing, using his power and resources to invade her privacy, to pursue her like prey. Instead, he set the phone down and sat in the darkness, allowing himself to truly feel the shame that her words had awakened. It was uncomfortable, this sensation of being wrong, of being less than he believed himself to be. But somewhere in that discomfort, something else stirred. A desire not to possess her, but to prove her wrong, not about what he had been, but about what he could become. The city lights blurred as Nathan realized that Claire Bennett had done something no one else had managed in over a decade. She had made him want to be better, not for business success or social approval, but for the simple reason that someone he barely knew had looked at him and found him wanting in the ways that truly mattered. The promise to himself. As dawn broke over the city skyline, painting the clouds in shades of pink and gold, Nathan made a decision. He would see Claire again, not to propose to her or buy her affection, but to show her that her words had not fallen on deaf ears. He had no idea if she would ever give him a chance to prove himself changed. He had no guarantee that he could even accomplish such a transformation. But for the first time since building his empire, Nathan Sterling wanted something money couldn't buy. He wanted to be the kind of man who deserved the respect of someone like Claire Bennett. And that wanting, that hunger for moral redemption rather than material gain, was the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. The sun rose fully, flooding his penthouse with golden light, and Nathan felt something he hadn't experienced in years. He felt hope. Not the confident expectation of getting what he wanted, but the uncertain, vulnerable hope that maybe, just maybe, he could become more than the sum of his bank accounts. Claire Bennett had rejected him completely, and in doing so, she had given him the most valuable gift anyone ever had. She had given him a reason to change.
3 weeks passed since the gala, and Nathan Sterling found himself in unfamiliar territory. He sat in business meetings but heard Claire's voice saying, "You're poor where it actually matters." He signed million-dollar contracts but remembered the disappointment in her eyes. Sleep became difficult, not because of business stress, but because a woman he barely knew had exposed a truth he had spent years avoiding. James, his driver of 8 years, noticed the change first. Nathan no longer requested detours past expensive clubs or asked to be driven to the homes of women whose numbers filled his phone. Instead, he asked questions that seemed completely out of character. "James, do you think I'm a good person?" Nathan asked one morning as they sat in traffic. James met his eyes in the rearview mirror, surprised by the vulnerability in his employer's voice. "I think you're a complicated person, sir, like most of us." "That's a diplomatic answer," Nathan said with a slight smile. "What I mean is, if you weren't paid to be around me, would you choose to be?" The older man considered the question carefully. "6 months ago, I would have said no, sir, but something's changed in you recently. You seem more present, less distracted by conquest, and more focused on substance." Nathan nodded slowly, absorbing the honest assessment. Claire had awakened something in him, a dissatisfaction with the shallow existence he had built. But awareness was not the same as change, and he had no idea how to bridge that gap. The research that revealed humanity. Against his better judgment, Nathan did have his assistant compile basic information about Claire Bennett, but only what was publicly available. No invasive investigation, no private details, just the facts that anyone could find with a simple search. What he learned humbled him further. Claire worked 2 jobs, the event coordination company during evenings and weekends, and a marketing firm during regular business hours. She lived in a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood. Her social media showed pictures with friends at coffee shops and parks, simple pleasures that cost little but seemed to bring genuine joy. Most significant was the information about her father, Robert Bennett, a retired high school English teacher who had been diagnosed with a progressive heart condition. Medical bills were mounting, which explained why Claire worked so hard. She wasn't building a career empire or chasing luxury. She was trying to save her father's life. Nathan closed the file, feeling the weight of his earlier proposition with renewed shame. While he threw money at temporary pleasures, Claire fought to keep her family together. The contrast could not have been more stark. The orchestrated accidents. Nathan began attending events he would normally have avoided, charity functions and community gatherings where his presence raised eyebrows. He donated generously but quietly, without demanding recognition or photo opportunities. And inevitably, because the event planning world was smaller than it seemed, he crossed paths with Claire again. It happened at a hospital fundraiser, a modest affair compared to the luxury gala where they first met. Claire was managing the registration table when Nathan arrived. Her professional mask slipped for just a moment, surprise and wariness flashing across her face before she recovered. "Mr. Sterling, welcome. Your donation was very generous," she said, her tone carefully neutral. "Please, call me Nathan, and I'm not here for recognition, just to support a good cause." He kept his distance, respecting her space, noting how her shoulders relaxed slightly when he made no move to approach closer. "That's admirable," Claire said, though her eyes searched his face for signs of the arrogant man she had rejected weeks before. Nathan wanted to say more, to apologize, to explain that her words had haunted him every day since their encounter, but the registration line behind him was growing, and this was neither the time nor the place. He simply nodded and moved on, feeling her gaze follow him into the event space. The reputation that preceded him. Claire tried to focus on her work, but Nathan's presence disturbed her equilibrium more than she wanted to admit. During a brief break, her colleague Maria pulled her aside with barely contained excitement. "Do you know who that is? Nathan Sterling just donated $50,000 to this hospital. $50,000! Do you know what his reputation is?" Claire's stomach tightened. "I can imagine." Maria leaned in conspiratorially. "They call him the Collector. Beautiful women, expensive art, rare cars. He acquires things, enjoys them briefly, then moves on. There are stories about models, actresses, even a senator's daughter. None of them lasted more than a few months. Each word felt like a small cut. Claire had sensed this about Nathan during their first meeting, but hearing it confirmed made her feel both vindicated in her rejection and strangely disappointed. Some small part of her had hoped she might have been wrong about him. "Why are you telling me this?" Claire asked, though she already knew. "Because I saw how he looked at you earlier, like your next acquisition. Just be careful, okay? Men like that don't change. They just get better at hiding what they really are." Claire nodded, the warning settling into her chest like a stone. She returned to work, determined to maintain her professional distance and nothing more. The offer that tested everything. 2 weeks later, Claire's world tilted on its axis. Her father's condition worsened suddenly, requiring an expensive surgical procedure that insurance would only partially cover. The remaining cost was staggering, a sum that would take Claire years to save, even working 3 jobs. She sat in the hospital financial counselor's office, the paperwork swimming before her eyes as tears threatened to fall. The counselor spoke gently about payment plans and medical loans, but the numbers were insurmountable. Without the surgery within the next month, her father's prognosis was grim. That evening, Claire walked through the city in a daze, barely noticing where her feet carried her. She ended up at a small park overlooking the river, sitting on a bench as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Claire." She looked up to find Nathan standing a respectful distance away, concern etched on his features. Of all the people to find her in this moment, fate had chosen the most complicated option. "How did you—" she began, then stopped. It didn't matter. "I saw you leave the hospital. You looked devastated. I was visiting the children's ward for a foundation meeting," Nathan explained, his voice gentle. "May I sit?" Claire nodded, too tired to maintain her usual walls. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the river flow past, carrying the day's light toward darkness. "My father needs surgery," Claire heard herself say, the words escaping before she could stop them. "It costs more than I can possibly afford, and without it, he'll die within 6 months. Nathan's jaw tightened, and she saw genuine pain flash across his face. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "Let me help." Claire's laugh was bitter. "Of course, that's what men like you do, right? Swoop in with money, expecting something in return." "No expectations," Nathan said quickly, turning to face her fully. "No strings, no conditions, no prices. Just help from someone who has more money than he knows what to do with, to someone who needs it desperately." "I don't believe you." Claire's voice broke despite her efforts to stay strong. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant as he seemed to gather his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a rawness she had never heard before. "You're right. I'm exactly what you think I am. A collector, a user, someone who treats people like acquisitions. I've been that person for so long I forgot there was any other way to be." He paused, his hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles went white. "I can't undo my past. I can't take back the way I've treated people, the hearts I've broken, the relationships I've destroyed through my own selfishness. But I can choose who I want to be moving forward, and I want to be someone who helps without expectation, who gives without keeping score." He turned to look at her, and in the fading light she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like fear. "Let me pay for your father's surgery, not as an investment in you, not as a way to buy your time or affection, but because it's the right thing to do, because I have the means and you have the need, and that should be enough." "And if I say no?" Claire asked, testing him. "Then I respect your decision and walk away," Nathan said simply. "But your father still deserves the best medical care available, regardless of what you think of me." Claire felt tears slide down her cheeks, hot and unwelcome. Pride warred with desperation in her chest. She wanted to refuse him, to prove that her principles were stronger than circumstance. But this wasn't about her pride. This was about her father's life. "Why should I trust you?" she whispered. Nathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, writing something on the back before handing it to her.
This is my personal attorney's number. Have him draw up a contract that states the money is a no-strings gift, no repayment required, no expectations of any kind. If I ever bring it up or try to use it as leverage, you can take me to court for everything I own." The offer was so unexpected, so completely contrary to everything she knew about men like him, that Claire found herself momentarily speechless. "I don't want to be the man I was when we met. I want to be someone who uses his wealth to make the world better, not just his own life more entertaining. You showed me what I had become, Claire. Let me show you that people can change." She looked at the card in her hand, then at the man beside her. Nathan Sterling sat on a park bench with no guards, no assistants, no armor of arrogance, just a man who seemed genuinely, desperately sincere about wanting to help. "One dinner," Claire said finally, her voice barely audible. "You pay for the surgery with the contract like you said, and I'll have dinner with you. One conversation where we talk like normal human beings. That's all I can offer." Nathan's face transformed, relief and something deeper flooding his features. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you." They sat together as darkness fell completely.
The morning of Robert Bennett's surgery arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel both fragile and full of possibility. Claire sat in the hospital waiting room, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The surgery would take 6 hours, the doctors had said, and every minute stretched like an eternity. She had not expected Nathan to come. Their dinner was scheduled for the following week, after her father's recovery began. The contract had been signed exactly as Nathan promised, with his attorney ensuring that the money was an irrevocable gift with no strings attached. Claire had read every word 3 times, searching for hidden clauses or loopholes, but found none. Yet here Nathan was, walking through the waiting room doors at 7 in the morning, carrying a bag from the bakery near Claire's apartment. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, looking more human than she had ever seen him. "I thought you might need company," Nathan said softly, settling into the chair beside her without asking permission. "And maybe some fresh breakfast. You probably haven't eaten." Claire wanted to refuse, to maintain her independence, but exhaustion and fear had worn down her defenses. She accepted the offered croissant with a quiet thank you, surprised to find tears threatening at this simple gesture of thoughtfulness. "You didn't have to come," she said, her voice rough from lack of sleep. "I know, but I wanted to." Nathan set his own coffee on the small table between them. Nobody should face something like this alone. They sat together as the hours crawled past, sometimes talking quietly about nothing important, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. Nathan told her about his childhood, how his father had built the Sterling empire through ruthless business practices and emotional distance, how Nathan had learned that love was weakness and sentiment was for people who could not afford to be strong. "I became exactly what he taught me to be," Nathan admitted, staring at his hands. "Cold, calculating, measuring every relationship by what I could gain from it. I thought that made me powerful. Really, it just made me empty." Claire listened, seeing the man beneath the reputation for the first time. She shared her own story, growing up with a father who taught English because he loved books and believed education could change lives, how her mother had died when Claire was 12 and Robert had raised her alone, sacrificing his own dreams to ensure she had opportunities he never did. "He taught me that wealth is not about money. It's about how many people's lives you touch with kindness. By that measure, my father is the richest man I know." The waiting room revelation. Around hour 4, Claire finally broke down. The stress, the fear, the exhaustion all crashed over her at once. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Without hesitation, Nathan moved closer, offering his presence without forcing physical contact. "He's all I have," Claire whispered through her tears. "If I lose him, I lose everything that matters." "You won't lose him," Nathan said with quiet conviction. "The surgeon is the best in the country. Your father is strong, and you're here, and that means something. Love means something." Claire looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, and for the first time since they met, she let herself lean against him. Nathan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her carefully, as if she were something precious that might break.
They stayed that way until the surgeon finally emerged, tired but smiling, with news that the operation had been successful. Robert would need months of recovery, but the prognosis was excellent. Claire collapsed with relief, and Nathan caught her, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. In that moment, something fundamental shifted between them. Claire felt it like a key turning in a lock, opening a door she had kept firmly bolted. And Nathan felt it too, this terrifying sensation of caring about someone else's happiness more than his own comfort. The waiting room revelation. A week later, Claire agreed to honor their agreement. One dinner, a conversation between two people trying to understand each other. But instead of choosing an expensive restaurant where Nathan would be recognized and fawned over, Claire suggested a small family-owned Italian place in her neighborhood. Nathan arrived on time, driving himself rather than having James drop him off. He wore nice clothes, but nothing ostentatious, and when he greeted Claire, there was nervousness in his smile that she found unexpectedly endearing. The restaurant was warm and unpretentious, with checkered tablecloths and the scent of garlic and fresh bread filling the air. The owner, an elderly woman named Rosa, greeted Claire like family and eyed Nathan with the protective suspicion of someone who had known Claire since childhood. "You treat her right, young man, or you answer to me," Rosa said, wagging a finger at Nathan with mock severity. "Yes, ma'am," Nathan replied seriously, and Claire saw Rosa's expression soften slightly at his respectful tone. They ordered simple dishes, no wine list with bottles costing hundreds of dollars, just good food and honest conversation. Nathan asked Claire about her dreams, her hopes, the things she wanted from life beyond just survival. And for the first time in years, Claire allowed herself to articulate desires she had buried beneath responsibility. "I wanted to write," Claire admitted, twirling pasta on her fork. "Stories, maybe a novel someday. My father encouraged it, but after his diagnosis, I couldn't justify spending time on something that might never pay bills." "You should write," Nathan said firmly. "Talent shouldn't be buried because of circumstance." Claire studied him across the table. "And what about you? What do you want that money can't buy?" The question seemed to catch Nathan off guard. He set down his fork, considering carefully before answering. "I want to matter, not because of my bank account or my business deals, but because I made someone's life genuinely better. I want to be remembered as someone who gave more than he took." "That's a significant change from the man you propositioned to me at the gala," Claire said, though her tone held curiosity rather than accusation. Nathan winced at the memory. That man was playing a role he had perfected over years, rich, powerful, untouchable. It took you refusing to play along to show me how hollow that role really was. Their dinner was interrupted by the arrival of a woman who embodied everything Claire was not. Tall, perfectly styled, dripping in jewelry and designer labels, Victoria Hand swept into the restaurant like a storm entering calm waters. "Nathan, darling," Victoria purred, ignoring Claire entirely. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. You've been positively invisible." Nathan's expression closed off, walls rising that Claire had watched him slowly dismantle over the past weeks. "Victoria, I'm having dinner. Perhaps we could talk another time." Victoria's eyes finally landed on Claire, assessment cold and dismissive. "Oh, how charming. Playing it normal, are we? Tell me, dear, what do you do?" "I work in event coordination," Claire said evenly, refusing to be intimidated. "How sweet. Nathan, surely you're not serious about this. She's not exactly your usual type." Victoria's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Nathan stood slowly, his voice dropping to a tone Claire had never heard him use. It was cold, dangerous, and absolutely final. "Victoria, you need to leave now. Whatever we had ended months ago, and you don't get to judge how I spend my time or who I spend it with." "You can't be serious. This little nobody over everything we could have together?" Victoria's mask of sophistication cracked, revealing ugly desperation beneath. "This little nobody has more integrity in her smallest finger than you've ever had in your entire body," Nathan said quietly. "She sees me as a person, not a bank account. She challenges me to be better, not comfortable. And yes, I am absolutely serious. Now leave before I have Rosa personally escort you out." Rosa, who had been watching from behind the counter, moved forward with surprising speed for her age. "You heard him. Out. We don't serve your kind here." Victoria left in a fury of clicking heels and muttered threats, but the damage was done. The intimate atmosphere had been shattered, replaced with tension and uncertainty. Nathan sat back down, his hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry. Victoria and I had a brief involvement several months ago. She wanted access to my business connections. I wanted companionship without commitment. When I ended it, she didn't take it well." "She's beautiful," Claire said quietly. "She's empty," Nathan countered immediately. "Beautiful on the outside, hollow within. I know because I was the same way. We were perfect for each other in all the worst ways." Claire listened, seeing the man beneath the reputation for the first time. She shared her own story, growing up with a father who taught English because he loved books and believed education could change lives. How her mother had died when Claire was 12 and Robert had raised her alone, sacrificing his own dreams to ensure she had opportunities he never did. "He taught me that wealth is not about money. It's about how many people's lives you touch with kindness. By that measure, my father is the richest man I know." The waiting room revelation. 2 weeks later, after their dinner, Claire received a call that made her blood run cold. Her father had been readmitted to the hospital with complications from the surgery. Nothing life-threatening, the doctors assured her, but he would need additional care and monitoring. Claire sat beside Robert's hospital bed, holding his weathered hand while he slept. The medical bills were mounting again, insurance covering less than expected. She had taken time off work without pay, and the financial pressure was building back up, despite Nathan's earlier help. When Nathan arrived that evening, having heard about the situation through the hospital's foundation network, he found Claire staring out the window at the city lights, exhaustion written in every line of her body. "How is he?" Nathan asked softly. "Stable, recovering, but the bills keep coming, and I can't keep taking time off work, but I can't leave him alone either." The words came out flat, defeated. Nathan was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Let me hire a private nurse. Full-time care for however long he needs it." Claire shook her head immediately. "I can't